Welcome into the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. You figured that out because you're smart, and it's also the name of the show. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. The happiest of New Years to all of you out there. Now, you might be wondering to yourself, Russ, are you hungover? I'm not. Russ, why are you late? New Year, new me. New Year, new me. No, this was actually, my kids decided that they were going to play with Dad's charging wire. Can't do the show without the charging wire. We found it. And I'll tell you what we found. As we left 2024, we found some hope. Some hope you can believe in. Now look, Philadelphia in 2024 had a lot of disappointments. But 2025, we're going to make it so great. 2025. The Philadelphia 76ers enter 2025 on a 4-game winning streak. The Philadelphia Flyers picked up a win in San Jose. The Eagles are still apparently trying to decide whether or not they're going to let Saquon Barkley go for the rushing record. The Philadelphia Phillies remain on my shite list along with the Philadelphia Union. But it is a new year, and I'll tell you one thing that sustains me. One thing that absolutely sustains me on a beautiful Wednesday morning is just a tiny bit of anger and a tiny bit of saltiness, and neither of them are things that I possess. Because Ford, in response to Allison is totally right. And this is part of the problem this morning with the charging wire. I realized that the thumbnail of the episode says 2024 and not 2025. So everybody remember, we are now in 2025. This is one of those things where back in the day, back in the teaching days, you go and you write the new year on the board on January 2nd. Everybody goes, oh my gosh, it really is a new year, isn't it? Wow, new year, new me. I had the date wrong. So Ford goes, Russ is not an attention to detail guy, hence why he keeps trying to give away jerseys to people that don't actively support his show. By God, do you see the humanity in the YouTube chat? Linda Joseph. Ford, what was that you were saying? Your saltiness sustains me. Linda Joseph is the winner of the Drive to 500 jersey. Len, I got your email. I will now confirm that by virtue of you responding here in the comments as well, that you are the one you say you are. I could also double check because I think you've gotten something from the Snow the Goalie store before, but now I don't have to do much of an ID verification. Linda Joseph has requested a Kelly Green Saquon Barkley jersey. Len, we're going to figure this out. I'll send you an email. Just need to get confirmation on the address, and I'll have it sent your way. Anyway, Len is here. I said in the last episode that I was a little bit happy in that, like, I recognize that name and I know that person is real and that person participates in the comment section here and on Snow the Goalie, so I know Len is real. I have a very quick announcement, a programming note, if you will. Little programming note before we get into today's episode. Of course, I will be back here on Friday morning with a new episode of the Russ Joy Show. But if you are a pro wrestling fan, tomorrow's the big day. I am bringing back It's Just Wrestling. I'm very excited about it. That show is coming back Thursday mornings, 8:30. Tomorrow's episode might be pre-recorded because a meeting got shifted around at work. there's a good chance that tomorrow's episode is pre-recorded. But if you are a pro wrestling fan, whether it's WWE, AEW, something else, it'll probably be worth checking out. I actually woke up this morning. I was very excited because I saw, oh yeah, it's 2025. That means all of the old 2019 AEW shows are on there. All the old Dynamites, all the old pay-per-views. Takes me back to a time when the show was like red hot and makes me realize how far it's fallen. But that's okay. Sometimes it's just good to go back and live a little nostalgia. Anyway, I'll get into all that because there's a lot to talk about on the pro wrestling front. Tomorrow on It's Just Wrestling, if you haven't done so already, you can go subscribe on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. You'll see my face. Like, it's kind of hard to miss. The thumbnails look similar, and there's me. You'll find it. It's got a nice following on YouTube. Anyway, let's go over to the comments here really quick before we get into today's show. I don't think today's going to be a particularly long episode. We don't have that much new stuff to break down, but we do have to talk about, like, positive trends. And really, the most positive trend is what's happening with the basketball team. I now acknowledge the basketball team once again. And much to Ford's dismay, I'm going to remind you one of the things that I've been consistent in saying about the Eastern Conference. We'll get there in a little bit, but first, out to the comments. Chris Freed says, Happy New Year. Spending this morning looking at flights to Miami next Thursday for the Orange Bowl. Anyone ever been to Hard Rock Stadium? Any tips? Chris, if T from the TO3, oh, he's here. There he is. T from the TO3. With a what up, Russ? T from the TO3 lives down that way. He could probably give you some recommendations. You guys can link up. Probably a good call. T from the TO3 works in sports radio as a producer down in those parts. I think it's Miami. And if not, I just consider the entire state of Florida to just be one big town of retirees and little Cuba, little Havana. I'm supposed to go to a thing in Florida. This year now, 2025. And I thought it was in Miami, and I got really excited because I've never been to Little Havana before. And I was like, yo, this is going to be great. And it's not in Miami. It's in a different town. And that's okay. But I did feel a little bit sad. Anyway, we're going to keep going. AJ Snap, who did not win a Rangers jersey or the NWHL jersey that he was looking for, says, good morning, you flock of beauties. I love that. Let's see. Ford just says, actually, Allison called you out on the date. I just made it better and more entertaining. Ford has entered 2025 with as much humility as possible. He didn't watch Muppet Christmas Carol. Maybe we need to have him get visited by the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future yet, or the Christmas yet to come. All right. Let's see. Chris Freed says, no, one less beaver to gaze at during the show. I appreciate that. I mean, he's over here. I haven't put him away yet. Yesterday, I came up from my basement, from the studio, and I walked into the main part of my house, and my wife, for whatever reason, decided to take down all the Christmas decorations, and it was a point of contention in this house. I said, the kids are going to be devastated. She's like, no, they won't. Kids are at my parents' house. They came home. Nobody noticed. It was just me. I guess I'm the only one who cares about Christmas in this house. Anyway, let's see. Spiral Out says, Happy New Year's, Russ. Thank you, Spiral. Thank you very much. Chris Freed, about tomorrow with the return of It's Just Wrestling, says, if you're going to pre-record, just make sure you have a segment on potential chaos Vince McMahon may unleash shortly after his non-compete expires. We'll see. I don't know if he's going to do anything. I really don't know. C-Mac says, New Year's 2025. It's just another day when you hit 50. Yeah, I mean, listen, there's a little bit to that, right? Like we take the perception of time and the calendar and we set these arbitrary dates and figures to reset who we are. It's Wednesday. Yesterday was Tuesday. Tomorrow's Thursday. And after that, it's Friday. Got to get down on Friday. 8:30 a.m. on the Russ Joy Show. I don't really do resolutions anymore because I typically break them anyway. I don't really know anybody who makes a resolution and then by December 31st says, oh, yeah, I got it done. Now, I did see there was a guy from another wrestling show that I used to hop on as a guest from time to time. And I've known this guy since like 2002, maybe. From a distance, we used to play Halo together. And I saw on Facebook that the guy like dropped like 46 or 50 pounds or something. I was like, okay, well, that's a resolution. That's a big resolution. It might have been more than that. But I was like, okay, that was a resolution. He was like, I set out to do it, lost a bunch. He came down from like 414 pounds, like down to 3-something. He's trying to get down to 250. So he's like one of the only people that I know of that actually lived up to their New Year's resolution. Now, I, on the other hand, I just don't tend to make them. I kind of move through the cosmos and just go, all right, try to be better this year. Like I could tell you, I would like to lose 20 pounds. Am I going to? I have no idea. Would I like to? It'd be great. Am I going to go to the gym after the show today? Maybe. Tomorrow, though. Everybody goes back to school tomorrow. I get back a little bit of silence during the day. But I think I'll miss the chaos upstairs. We'll see. Anyway, Allison says, I have to wait until the girls go back to school next week to take the decorations down. See? So, Allison, you have to wait a week, and they're already down at my house, and I don't know how to feel. All right. Ford is going to need some kind of a reward. I don't know who's going to give it to him. It won't be me, unless he wins fair and square another day. But Ford says, imagine being here day in and day out, constantly supporting and chatting, then seeing a random dude get a free Eagles jersey. Sad state of affairs. I weep for Connor Allen and Fawcett and Ford, etc. Linda Joseph has been here. You can't slander Linda Joseph. All right. Brian C., after a big win against the San Jose Sharks, says Flyers, Stanley Cup. All right, let's get into some of the bigger stories going on in Philadelphia. I mentioned Sixers are on a 4-game win streak. Flyers won last night. And the Eagles are still trying to decide what's going to happen with Saquon Barkley. They still, for whatever reason, they don't seem to have a grasp, or at least publicly, they're not telling anyone what they're doing. And I find myself like constantly surprised by the fact that like, why are we this far into the Giants week, into week 18, and we don't know whether or not Saquon is going to start, if Saquon's even going to get a chance? I said on Monday's show, and I've kind of doubled down on this since. I've gone back and I've racked my brain, and was I being a little bit too emotional? Not really. But was I being a little bit too much of a prisoner of the moment? And am I throwing aside the possibility of what's best for the Eagles and winning a Super Bowl by saying, let Saquon Barkley go for it? No. I think I'm right. I think that, like, based on what his body of work has been this year, based on the fact that, like, I appreciate a bye week, but I think that you do need to keep guys kind of in the rhythm and in the flow. You don't want to be rusty coming off of a bye week. I'm fine with Saquon Barkley getting a quarter, maybe 2 quarters to go after it. And I think that just based on the fact that he had like over 170 yards against the Giants in their first meeting and effectively like said, all right, I'm good. Like I've done enough here. I don't need to embarrass the Giants. Like I've made my point. I think he can get to 101 yards in the first half. Excuse me. I think he could absolutely get to 101 yards in the first half. I wouldn't be surprised if he can get there within a single quarter. But like, if we're being fair here, I think like a half is fine. And then pull the starters. You know, there have been people the last few days who have also said, well, you know, you can't sit everybody. You need to still field a team. And that's true. Now, I've seen a lot of conjecture going around about what a selfish player Saquon Barkley would be to go after it. I saw, who was it yesterday? It was Kyle Brandt, who I like. I like Kyle Brandt a lot. But Kyle Brandt was over on Good Morning Football, and he kind of, not unload. I wouldn't say that he unloaded. Unloaded, I think, sounds a little bit too divisive. But he had something to say about whether or not Saquon should go for the record. And really, he kind of threw it at the feet of Nick Sirianni. And so before we get into anything else, I want to make sure that we wrap up that part of what was left over from Monday, because as of recording, Nick Sirianni hasn't made a formal announcement yet. I want to go over really quickly to Kyle Brandt, and I want you to hear, because remember, like when the Eagles were on their run to the Super Bowl win, Kyle Brandt was as in on the Eagles as anybody. I want you to hear what he had to say, because I agree to an extent. I understand where he's coming from, but I do think that he's off base. I want to go over to Kyle Brandt now from Good Morning Football, and that's a great face. An unfortunate pausing. I want to hear what he had to say. And really, again, he puts it at the feet of Nick Sirianni.
I'd sit him down. Don't even dress him. Sit him down. Sit him down. I respect Mark Schlereth a lot, and I like the anecdote that Peter brings up. He's talking about Terrell Davis getting 2,000 yards. Saquon already has 2,000 yards. He's already in that club. Also, Terrell Davis infamously career cut short by bad injuries. There's bad energy out there. And I disagree with this, that let the player decide. That's not the player's job. You're the coach of the football team. It is your job. It is your job to make decisions what best suits the football team. This is an individual record in the final season of a meaningless game. You're tempting bad things. You're tempting the football gods. And never mind some terrible injury that could happen. Why not just give them a week off? You ain't getting the bye. You're going.
All right, so there is truth to that. We talked about this on Monday, but like the Eagles are locked into the number 2 seed. There's nothing that you can do playoff positioning-wise that makes sense. Like, it is kind of hard. There are some logical leaps that you have to make in order to say, like, yes, it's worth Saquon going after it. From a team perspective, there's really not. Unless you're like me and you think, hey, keep the guys in rhythm. A week off is great, but give them another week to go in and be a well-oiled machine going into whoever you're going to play in the first round, which still remains up in the air. I said Green Bay on Monday, but there are a couple of other scenarios that could work out, including like Washington, which I'm not really afraid of, but like it's still realistic. All right, let's go back to Kyle Brandt.
Want to work in the wild card round, and Saquon is the best player on your team. Do you want to get your player the record, or do you want to try to win the Super Bowl this year? Don't tell me it's both, because playing him this week is not in the best interest of you winning the Super Bowl this year. Objectively, it isn't. I love Saquon. It'd be really cool if he broke the record. Not like this. Make the smart move, not the emotional move. He already has a 2,000-yard.
Now, he says, not like this. Now, in fairness, one of the things that he is not banging the drum on is the idea of, oh, Barkley needs the extra game. As we broke down on Monday, Dickerson did it in 16 games, but he broke O.J. Simpson's record, who only did it in 14. So the game argument really isn't a fair one. And as I mentioned the other day, like, a lot of your favorite single-season records are going to fall, and the more regular season games that get added to a season, obviously, you're going to start seeing career total records also start to fall. Because if it's 17 games for a few years and then it goes on to 18, on aggregate, right, like over an 8-year career, that's an entire extra season based on the old 16-game model. So, like, a lot of records are going to fall. And in fairness, if you wanted to make the argument, like, Saquon could set the record, but then, you know, it could get broken in a year or two, like, that's fair. But that also is kind of based on the idea that you're going to have running backs that are going to kind of stick it to the traditional ideology here of this being a pass-first league and running backs not really being able to eat. All right, back to Kyle.
Season, you already have a million stories to hang your hat on. You made the Giants look ridiculous. He came over. He's great. 2,000 yards. He's a superstar. You've already had a million things to be like, look how great this is. The Dickerson record is just taunting you. It is a siren song. It is calling you in to crash on the rocks before what's really important, which is having the best possible Saquon Barkley we can have for a long playoff push because we didn't get the one. You don't let the player decide. You're the coach. You're the boss.
Now, he did say one little voice, which took me back to Doug. One little voice says think big. Ooh, yeah. 90s kids, where you at? Anyway, he is right. Insofar as players shouldn't get to make this call. Now, I've been saying if Saquon wants to go after it, let him go after it. But that's also like with the understanding that, like, Saquon might want to go after it. The organization still has to decide if it's the best thing for them. And if they're like, yo, dude, not worth the potential injury risk, we need you for the playoffs, then fine. I'm going to wrap up here. But this is where he kind of throws this to Sirianni.
Boss, you decide. And if you sit him down and say, I'm doing this to win a Super Bowl, Philly will respect you, and Saquon will respect you. Be a man, be the coach, and sit his ass down.
Reference the freaking Odyssey.
That's right.
Homer on that one. I love it, Kyle. Good take. I can't argue.
Okay. So that was where Kyle Brandt landed. Now, in fairness, again, I think that it's a somewhat fair critique. I really do. I think it's fair. Will the Eagles ultimately decide to let Barkley go for it? There is a big part of me that says no. In fact, like I think it was yesterday, Joe Banner, former Eagles executive, kind of the guy who helped to mold Howie Roseman into this legit front office executive, Joe Banner effectively said, like, knowing the people that are there, knowing everybody who is in the Eagles organization, he said he sees virtually no chance of them letting Saquon Barkley go after this. Now, there was the point raised that, When Devontae Smith was kind of going after a rookie record, they let him go after it. Circumstances were a little bit different. I don't know. I'm now 2 days into this, beyond like the initial revealing of where I feel, and I'm still pretty confident. And like, let him go out for a quarter, see how it goes. Let him go out for the first half, see how it goes. I don't want to see Saquon Barkley and the starters in for the entire game. And in fairness, like, I think ending on a high, ending on a win is really important. And if you also happen to set the rushing record in the process, then it's just a good thing for morale. It's just another great accomplishment. And by the way, not that it matters, okay, because it doesn't. But like, there were a lot of questions going into the season about how the offensive line was going to perform without Jason Kelce. And we all go, hey, Jason Kelce, first ballot Hall of Famer, hugely loved player in this city and in the sport and in the football community. And at the same time, you have to kind of sit back and go, the line hasn't gotten worse. Now, you can make the case that the tush push isn't quite as effective as it was with Kelce. But like, on the whole, offensive lines look great. I mean, you can't have a guy go for over 2,000 yards without that offensive line causing some massive holes, dominating the line of scrimmage. Like, this was one of the biggest question marks going into the year. It was linebackers, is whether or not they'd have a pass rush, and it was how was the offensive line going to perform without Jason Kelce. And to this point, I mean, it's passed with flying colors. Okay, so that was the Saquon thing. Now, there was another rumor that came out about the Eagles, and then we're going to get into the teams that are actively playing and are in the midst of winning. But there was a report that came out that Howie Roseman might entertain a job with the New York Jets, which is hilarious. Like, I'm sorry, there is practically no choice or no chance of it happening. But I'm gonna throw it over here really quick because it was somebody at Sportskeeda, I guess, was the one who put it out. We'll throw it here on the screen really quick, and this is like one of those aggregator accounts that I'm gonna show you. But you know, whatever. We're not trying to break news here. But this report came out. A league source told Tony Pauline that the Jets need to think outside the box and do something crazy, such as offering Howie Roseman the keys to the franchise and an equity stake in the organization. Sounds crazy, but it makes sense and may be necessary at this point. That somehow got construed into, and I guess we could say misconstrued, and ended up becoming something where people were like, oh, well, Howie Roseman grew up in New York. Howie Roseman was born in New York. People say that Howie Roseman's favorite team growing up was the New York Jets. What better thing to do than turn that organization around? I see virtually no chance that Howie Roseman turns around. Now, if they offer him an equity stake in the team, that's different, okay? Unlikely, but like, okay, let's play this one out. Really quick thought exercise. If you're Howie Roseman, is there any reason whatsoever that you want to take over the Jets, just based on what the Jets are, the talent the Jets have, the draft capital the Jets have coming up, knowing what that division looks like, at least for the next few years where Josh Allen is going to continue to lead that team. And oh, by the way, like a healthy Miami could also be a playoff contending team year in and year out. Do you really want to take on that team? Oh, by the way, that's like also kind of casting aside, but like the Patriots are going to have a high pick and like you never know what's going to happen. They're probably done. But like you still hang on to that a little bit. As long as Bob Kraft's in charge. It hasn't been a great few years, post-Belichick and post-Brady. But you'd be kind of silly to write them off entirely. But if you're Howie Roseman, is there any reason that you would want to go take that Jets job? Ownership is the only thing I can think, right? Because you look at the valuation of teams each and every year. They just continue to go up. I mean, Jeffrey Lurie sold a minority stake in the Philadelphia Eagles at like a $7 billion valuation, something crazy like that, right? If you're talking about like owning part of a New York-based team, even one that's bad, like the Jets, I don't know. If you offer Howie Roseman like 10% of the Jets, right? By the time he goes to retire, let's say 15, 20 years from now, the Jets' value could, I don't know, could it be like beyond $10 billion? So at 10%, you're talking about $1 billion payout? I mean, if it's me, I maybe consider it. That's the only way. Ownership stake is the idea of like, oh, give him the keys to the franchise. Who cares? He essentially has that with the Eagles. Oh, and by the way, like he has an Eagles team that like through some drafting, through some trades, despite the fact that there have been a few things that I said, hey, kind of some holes. You better hope the guys step up, and they have. it's still like a relatively young team in Philadelphia. Like, one of the big things that we've been able to keep coming back to is rookies making a huge impact. Young players on the team making a huge impact. I mean, they're outliers. They are very much an anomaly. DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell are absolute outliers. Young corners aren't supposed to contribute the way that those guys are. You were able to go out and draft Jason Kelsey's heir apparent at kind of his behest, but like, that has worked out for you. The linebacking core and getting Nakobe Dean healthy for a season and seeing the impact he makes, that has helped. Nolan Smith takes another step. Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis. Like, the young guys on the team are really very much the core of a long-term contending team. So if you're Howie Roseman, I can't imagine that there's anything the Jets can offer you outside of an equity stake ownership-wise that would ever make you interested. And by the way, if I were Howie, like, conceptually, is $1 billion payout life-changing? It is. Would I blame him if he took a 10% stake in the Jets? No. Do I think that long-term it would be the best thing for his career? No. Now, is there an outside chance that Howie Roseman could turn that team around and then he looks like a genius? Maybe. Do I think that, like, it's worth it, especially knowing that he's overseeing a team that, like, has legitimate Super Bowl aspirations? I don't think it's smart at all. And he also has the ear of the owner. He seems to have the entire trust of ownership. There are no rumors. There have been no rumors about Howie Roseman being on a hot seat. If it's me, ask for a raise in Philadelphia. Keep going. A few years from now, the Jets are going to be just as bad. And then maybe once the Eagles are out of their Super Bowl contending window, then you entertain it. But you don't do it now. But that's just me. Chris Freed says, better chance the sports bubble pops over the next 10 to 20 years than to see $10 billion franchise valuations. I don't know. I can't say that. The way that the valuations of these teams have changed over the last 10 years, I don't view that, like, they're a limited commodity. And one of the things that you keep seeing is that, like, billionaires especially, they view it almost as like a prestige piece. It's almost like a bragging rights to own a team. Like, why did Steve Ballmer buy the Clippers? Big part of it was like, he's a sports fan, but it's also like there's another level to wealth. Like, there's a total different level to being an owner of a team and then potentially winning a championship. Like, Mark Cuban as a billionaire is one thing. Mark Cuban as the billionaire owner, now mostly former owner of the Dallas Mavericks, who won a title when he was the owner, like, that's a total different level. There's a reason that you see billionaire owners of teams try to buy teams in multiple American leagues and then go and kind of dabble in buying teams in Europe, in the EPL, because they want to have this big portfolio of teams. And that is kind of like a way that separates some of these billionaires from others. It's a great PR thing, assuming you do a good job with it. It's not a bad thing. And it's hard to buy teams. It is hard to get into ownership circles in these different leagues. So, okay, there's that. That's its own thing. We've gotten the Eagles out of the way. We're pretty far into the show. I'm going to go out to the comments here really quick because I did see there were a couple of things. Shakedown, First Responder Podcast says, yo, Russ, Happy New Year, dude. Happy New Year to you as well. We met up at the Press Row show about a month or so ago. Nico also here. Happy New Year, all. Shakedown says, Howie can keep all his green ties, though, but no way he goes to the Jets. I just don't see it. Now, could I be wrong? Maybe. Joe Douglas was part of this front office, and then he went there, and it hasn't exactly been a walk in the park. So, like, if I'm Howie and I'm looking at that, I'd probably say no. Like, there's no guarantee I'm going to have that job for, like, longer than 2 years, longer than 4 years. And for a team like the Jets to turn that around, that's going to take probably at least 4 or 5 years. And if you don't feel like you have the ability to, like, go into that and be able to make the long-term decisions, because at some point you have to, like, panic and make a big signing that you don't want to make, it's not a good situation. Now, I'll tell you what is a good situation. Your team, your town, your Philadelphia 76ers, because I have been banging the drums on this the entire season, and once again, Rustradamus appears to be right. Now, Ford might have left by now. Ford is still upset about the jersey, but Ford likes to kind of come back to this idea that, like, oh, are they really going to make the playoffs now? Like, after the Sixers lost Jared McCain to the torn meniscus and it does appear like he's going to miss much of, if not the entire rest of the season. I was like, well, I didn't expect Jared McCain to get hurt. I mean, he was a good rookie. He was exceeding expectations. You have Joel Embiid starting to look much more like Joel Embiid. You have Tyrese Maxey healthy, and Tyrese Maxey is legitimately continuing to grow each and every game. Paul George, despite the fact that on the stat sheet hasn't been maybe the contributor that you expected him to be as the third star on the team, is playing lights out defense, which actually does matter. Now, whether or not you want to try to go with, well, Tobias Harris used to play good defense, I'll tell you, I don't know who's actually going to be the one to play this role. All right, there might be somebody in the comments somewhere who's a Tobias Harris truther, but like there might be somebody out there who's like, well, Tobias Harris, let me tell you, Russ, love Tobias Harris, great guy, could hit a knockdown three-pointer sometimes, good rebounder of the ball, could get you some good vision, good court vision, got some assists, and, play defense. You could put Tobias Harris anywhere from the 1 to 4. He could defend anybody. Good luck if you believe that. But Paul George's defense has been sensational. Now, that doesn't show up on the stat sheet, but Paul George has been exceptional. Now, from a point standpoint, if you're just looking for what Paul George has been able to accomplish on the offensive end of the court, does it leave something to be desired? Maybe. He's averaging, just under 15.5 points. 5.5 rebounds, just under 5 assists per game, shooting about 41% from the field. I don't know what you thought Paul George was going to be. Did you expect Paul George to come in and be a 30-point scorer? You already have one of those, and you know that you have a guy who has won a scoring title before and has flirted with it a few times in Joel Embiid. You know that you have a young guard who's going to have the ball in his hands a ton and will likely be able to put up at least 25 points per game or close to it in Tyrese Maxey. If you thought that Paul George was going to come in and somehow score 30 points of his own, bless your heart. Now, if there's one thing about Paul George's game that hasn't wowed me, it's been the three-point shooting. He's down about 7% on shots from behind the arc versus like his career average. That to me is like the one thing that that certainly needs to get better. And I think that's a fair critique to have. But his steals, he's averaging 2 steals per game. That's up from his career average. He's averaging almost an assist and a half more per game. He's adapting to what life is like as the third guy. He's never really had to be the third guy before. Even if you want to go back to a year ago when he was playing with the Clippers, yeah, there was Kawhi. Yeah, there was James Harden. And yeah, maybe if those guys are healthy, Paul George is your third option. But the amount of times that those three guys got to play together, you never really had to adapt to being the number 3 guy. This is really a first for him. And it's a feeling out process because to this point in the season, he's played 20 games, but those 20 games haven't included Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. I think, the other night was the 5th game? Is that the 5th game that they've started and finished together? They haven't played a lot together. They're still trying to figure it out. And guess what? The beauty of this is, if you are able to keep Joel Embiid even remotely healthy, and if you are able to keep Tyrese Maxey healthy, and if you are able to load manage Paul George into a place where he's healthy going into the playoffs, you have no idea what this team could be. That game on Christmas Day, I broke it down last week, but the difference in that team, yeah, they almost blew the lead a few times late in the game, and in fact, they did blow a lead. But the gumption that they showed and the ability and the versatility that they showed to create their own shots and to get themselves back in that game and to ultimately beat Boston in Boston on Christmas Day, that's something we have not seen from a Joel Embiid team. Now, Paul George is not the certified cold-blooded killer that Jimmy Butler was. They're not the same player, not even remotely the same player. And the way that Jimmy Butler is viewed as a clutch player is certainly not what Paul George has been viewed at. In fact, a lot of people have viewed Paul George as a guy who comes up small in clutch situations. Now, that was weird with other teams. We'll see if the ball is in his hands late in the game and he gets the final shot. We will see how he performs as a member of the Philadelphia 76ers. But I look at it from the macro view. I go, listen, Paul George averaging 15.5 points per game, just under 5 assists, just under 6 rebounds per game. That's fine as your number 3, especially if you're getting roughly 30 points per game out of Joel Embiid and somewhere around there from Tyrese Maxey. This is a perfectly fine third guy. I want the three-point percentage to go up. If he can get back to his career average of around 38%, much more valuable guy. And ultimately somebody who's going to help push you over the top. I'm not going to make the comparison here, but just for the sake of comparison. When Boston built their big three, they had Paul Pierce in-house. They went out and they acquired Ray Allen, and they went out and they acquired Kevin Garnett. Now, again, these guys are not the same. The roles are not even remotely close. But you do have like guard, forward, and then power forward, not really a center. Embiid can be your Garnett. Maxey really is more of your Paul Pierce, which would then mean that Ray Allen and Paul George are kind of your third options, right? Paul Pierce was the bona fide number one. He was the scorer. He was the guy who everything kind of ran through with that Boston team. That's Maxey. Garnett was your guy who was a guaranteed double-double and could blow games open. Embiid is a better version of that. Maybe not as prolific on the boards, but overall is that big that you need. If Paul George can effectively be something similar to what Ray Allen was, guy who could just spot up in the corner and nail threes in big moments, this team can actually get beyond the second round of the playoffs. Now, a while ago, the playoffs seemed like an absolute fantasy. It felt like there was never going to be a chance that the Philadelphia 76ers were going to get themselves back in contention. The one thing that I kept coming back to was, if you can get 2 out of 3 of these guys healthy for 3 out of 4 games, you're going to win a lot of games because the East sucks. I want to just take it. I mean, we did this a while ago. It's been a few weeks. But for those of you who may have missed it, I want to take you to the standings because I told you the East sucks. Everybody who was getting worried and worked up about how, the Sixers are so far behind. They're off to a terrible start. They've now won 8 of their last 10 games. And here they are. They're number 11 in the conference. They're 11th in the conference at 13-17. They are in the midst of one of the longest win streaks in the Eastern Conference. But look over here. They're 14.5 games back of first. That's not what you're looking at. You're not catching Cleveland. You're not catching Boston. But take a look up here. You are only 5 games behind the Magic for the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference with a ton of games to play. You've only played 30 games. You got 52 left. Now, do I think the Sixers are ultimately going to finish in that top 4? Maybe not. But I've been saying all along, number 6 is definitely attainable. And here you are after a horrific start to the season where Joel Embiid wasn't in the lineup, where you were missing Paul George early because he got hurt in the preseason. You've lost Tyrese Maxey for a period of time. Despite all of that adversity, you are 3.5 games back of the number 6 seed and having to avoid a play-in. 3.5 games back. Do I think Atlanta is a legitimate team? No. They're better than expected. Do I think they're beatable? Sure. Do I think that over the course of the next 52 games, you might be able to catch Atlanta? I do. Do I think that Milwaukee has it in them to probably move up into that top 4, drop Orlando down? I do. Do I think Orlando's a good team? I do. Do I think they're beatable? Yes. Would I fear them in a playoff series? No. We expected Boston. We expected New York to be somewhere in the top 4. I thought that the Sixers would end up somewhere in the top 4. Left open the possibility that a Milwaukee with Giannis and with Dame Lillard could maybe find themselves up there. I did not see Cleveland coming, nor did anyone. But guys, 3.5 games back of the number 6 seed in the conference. You're, what did I say before? You're 4.5 or 5 games back from the number 4 seed. This season is far from over. 52 games to play. If you give me 2 out of 3 of the big 3, 3 out of every 4 games, they are just by virtue of talent going to fall into the top 6. I'm no longer even considering can you make the 8th seed? Yeah, you could get the 8th seed. This Sixers team is one of the best teams when healthy, is easily one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. And I could make the case that even if you look out west and you think about how this Sixers team could match up against a Western Conference team, there are some squads that scare me at least a little bit. But I like the Sixers' chances. Then again, you don't have to go through the West unless you make the finals. I just want the Sixers to get out of the second round. Do I think that this Sixers team, if healthy, can take down the Cavs? Yes. Do I think they could take down the Knicks? Yes. Do I think they could take down Orlando and Milwaukee? Yes and yes. Do I think that in a 7-game series they could take down Boston? No. Do I think it would be a lot closer this year? Yeah. And you know what? If they build some confidence, and if they play Boston again down the line and they beat Boston again, and now all of a sudden you don't have that doubt creeping into your minds that every time you play Boston they're going to embarrass you or they're going to come back and break your hearts. You pick up another win against Boston, guess what? All of a sudden it feels like a realistic option. Feels like a realistic opportunity to take down the Celtics. I'm going to go out to the comments. I want to see where people are at right now. Shakedown says likes the Russ Radamas moniker. Linda Joseph, replying to Chris Fried from before, says that Dallas is already at $10 billion. I think it was in the Forbes valuations of teams. They do I think they do stateside and then they do global. I think that's right that they're at about $10 billion. Let's see. Chris Fried says, I think NFL owners have brought in PE to cash out because they see this being a bubble, private equity. And then also says, it's New Year's Day. I don't want to burst Russ. Here we go. I don't want to burst Russ' hopes on the Sixers. They are who they are. But as Red once said, hope is a dangerous thing. I got you, Shawshank. I got you. Anyway, I'm feeling really good about the Sixers going into 2025. As we wake up on New Year's morning, I feel pretty damn good about where the Sixers are at. And given all the adversity they faced early in the season, they have righted the ship. We'll see. Now, another team that at least temporarily righted the ship, depending on what you view as righting the ship and what you view as a good thing or not, the Philadelphia Flyers picked up a win in San Jose. They're in the midst of that West Coast trip, that winter West Coast trip. To recap for people who might have missed it, they have been on the road since December 23rd. They got blown out in Pittsburgh 7-3. They took down Quitter Gautier's Ducks 3-1. In that game, Mishkov was benched for the third period. They lost to the Kings in a heartbreaker, a game that they probably should have won. But then they rebounded in a meaningful way with a 4-0 win over San Jose on Tuesday night. It wasn't exactly the game that you would have expected, but there was a positive that came out of this one. If you sat back and you were wondering to yourself, are the Flyers going to get Matvei Mishkov back on track? He didn't have a point last night. That's not what matters. You look at the final stats, and it's like Nick Seeler and Ryan Poehling score 2 of your goals. Yeah. Igor Zamula, who's not an NHL defenseman, had a goal. There's a real positive to take out of this game. And it's that Jamie Drysdale had 2 points. It's that Jamie Drysdale actually contributed in a meaningful way to a team's win. Drysdale has been up and down as it gets, and there have been a lot more downs than ups this season. But if you are somehow able to shake off the cobwebs and to do whatever I don't know what it is. I have no idea what Tortorella is going to have to do to fix Jamie Drysdale. Brad Shaw has worked wonders with a bunch of younger defensemen on this team over the last couple of years. He's going to have to use any remaining magic he has to try to get Jamie Drysdale back to looking like an NHL defenseman. But 2 points on the night doesn't hurt. That's a positive that you can hopefully build on. Because if you get Drysdale back to a place where he's feeling confident, you get him on that top power play unit, you convince him that he needs to put pucks on net, then all of a sudden, Jamie Drysdale could maybe kind of sort of live up to what the hopes were when he was the centerpiece of the trade that sent Quitter Gauthier away. But if he looks like a guy who's lost at even strength, who doesn't put the puck on net on the power play, and largely looks like he doesn't belong at this level, well, then you have a significant problem on your hands. Now, I can't overreact to Jamie Drysdale's 2-point performance. I can't sit back and say, all right, everything's fixed, we're good to go. That's not how this works. Am I at least slightly encouraged by the fact that he put 2 points up? I am. Am I going to do cartwheels? No. Do I think he needs to show it over like the next, 8 to 10 games? Show that maybe he's quote-unquote back? Yeah. Maybe then I'll start to feel better about him. But for right now, cool. A nice moment. One good game. That does not fix a player. But maybe it does give him some confidence, and maybe he starts feeling a little bit better about himself. Now, the Flyers are, as I mentioned, they're in the midst of this West Coast swing, and something bad happened, And they still have kind of like a murderer's row of games coming up. They lost Sam Ersson to injury. Now, here's the problem that you run into when you take a look at the Flyers in net this season. Sam Ersson came into the season as your number one. And he was the number one by a pretty substantial margin because going back to last year, Carter Hart and Sam Ersson played really, really well. And there were times that Ersson looked like a legitimate 1B in net. There were even some people that thought maybe Sam Ersson is a better long-term piece than Carter Hart. This season has been very up and down, and injuries have derailed Sam Ersson twice. He's missed periods of time twice this season due to injury. He had a groin injury, then they put him on IR, they brought him back off, he got hurt again. Now he appears hurt for the third time this season. Luckily, I guess, for the Flyers, they've been carrying 3 goalies, which is nonsense, but they have chosen to do it for whatever reason. So both Alexei Kolosov and Ivan Fedotov have been with this team for over a month. And if Sam Ersson is to miss time, the positive, I guess, is that we saw during his last stint on IR that Kolosov and Fedotov were able to tread water. At the very least, they were a good-looking duo, and they certainly looked better than when they had played sporadically earlier in the season. Your problem that you're going to run into is, what are you going to do with Sam Ersson? Because if he's hurt again, and he's going to miss extended time, which we don't know yet, but if he misses extended time, there is part of me that thinks you just shut him down, or yet at least shut him down for a month. You can't keep having this guy get hurt. He's supposed to be your number one going forward. Plus, it gives you the ability to look at Alexei Kolosov and Ivan Fedotov, maybe get some good film on one of those guys, and if you ultimately decide that you want to trade one of them, probably Fedotov, you have good film to try to oversell what exactly it is that you think you can get for like an Ivan Fedotov. I think that that's ultimately the way that they're going to go. I think they're much more apt to trading Fedotov than Kolosov. Kevin Kurz of The Athletic has a clear disdain in his heart for Alexei Kolosov. I mean, like, virtually every tweet that he's been putting out is like, Kolosov belongs in the AHL. Now, he's not alone in that belief, but he has very much planted his flag in that stance. If Ersson misses time, Kolosov is going to be the number one. Again, Kolosov had a really good stretch when Ersson was out. Hasn't exactly been lights out since. Now, you can look at the game against San Jose and say, hey, Kolosov had to come in relief, didn't give up a goal. That's fine. Kolosov's performance, though, leaves a little bit to be desired. And this is where I come back to, like, carrying 3 goalies is a mistake. Ivan Fedotov hasn't seen game action, like, in a meaningful way in a very, very long time. And when you think about, like, what it is that you need to find success as a goalie, a big part of it is consistent playing time. Or at least being able to get your body in the rhythm that, like, if you are definitely the backup and you're a significant backup, that you at least have in your mind your schedule to make sure that you stay loose, that you stay locked in, and that you're ready in case you're called upon. Fedotov has certainly not had that opportunity this season, or at least over the last month, because the Flyers haven't played him. They've just carried him here out of fear of putting him on waivers and somebody claiming him. They won't put Kolosov on waivers. You can say that it's because they're afraid that he's going to, like, go scamper off to Belarus again, but, like, there are legitimate questions to be had. And about whether or not they're making a mistake by carrying 3 goalies and not giving Fedotov any playing time. A situation like this, if it does end up coming to pass that Ersson is out for, let's say, a week, 2 weeks longer, now all of a sudden Fedotov is going to have to go from being cold and not seeing any game action, not being on a conditioning stint, to having to go out and probably play, I don't know, the 40 of a 60-40 split with Kolosov. I don't know. I don't think it's ideal. I think it's a legitimate issue, and I think that the Flyers maybe made a mistake here by carrying 3 goalies, because now you don't have 2 guys that are used to playing. You're down to 1. And as I mentioned before, Kolosov's performance of late hasn't exactly been lights out. Now I'm going to go over to the comments. Before I do, like, just to give you some context here, even if you look at Kolosov's last 5 games, if we take out last night because he only saw 7 shots, on the 12th against Detroit, he allowed 1 goal, 25 saves on 26 shots faced. That's good. Then they played the Kings at home, got their doors blown off, 7-3. 6 goals allowed. 2 of those were empty netters, but 6 goals allowed in that game. Not great. They lost in Pittsburgh, 7-3. He came in relief. Not a great game. He only gave up 1 goal, but again, not great. And then against the Kings, Kolosov factored into that game, gave up 5 goals, all 5 to the Kings. If Ersson is out for an extended period of time and Kolosov is your number 1, good luck. Either he's going to lock in like he did the last IR stint, or this team is about to lose a lot of games. All right, I'm going to go over to the comments here. Allison says, shocking they won against the second to last team in the league, usually the opposite with them. Let's see. Linda Joseph says, Nick Seeler with the moves on his goal last night. Seeler has these like weird moments where it's like he's the Monstars. Remember the Monstars? Took all the Michael Jordan's powers and Larry Bird's powers and into the ball. And then they became the Monstars. That's kind of like Nick Seeler. Like, I feel like sometimes Seeler goes over to somebody on the bench and like saps their offensive game, goes out, executes, and then gives it back when he comes back. Chris Reed says, Sharks are an average AHL team playing in the NHL. That's true. That's a team that's horrific. That's part of why it's so hard to race to the bottom in the NHL right now. There's a lot of parity in the league, but the bad teams are really bad. This Flyers team isn't good, but they're not San Jose bad. They're not Chicago bad. Allison also says, I think Ersson has been hurt this whole season. Even when he's back playing, I think he's still hurt. And then says they should have rotated, I guess, Fedotov in. Or they should have rotated him in last night, meaning I think Fedotov. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know if Ersson was hurt, but like here's the thing. I brought this up on Press Row Show last week, the week before, whatever it was. I said, if Ersson isn't ready to come back and take on the full load of being a starting goalie, which is something that had been kind of going around, if they need to like ease him back into the rotation, my point was, why even bring him back? Let him stay on IR until he's healthy, right? Why rush a guy back? You're carrying 3 goalies anyway. If he can't come back and just assume being the full-time starter, like you're not confident enough in his health that he can come back and play 70% of the games, then he shouldn't be back in. Because it also takes away a little bit of your roster flexibility when he comes off IR and then you're carrying 3 goalies again. I was shot down by somebody on the show. If he's healthy, he needs to play. And I said, well, what is healthy exactly? Because if he's not ready to be the full-time starter again, I would argue he's not healthy. This is a rebuilding team, and the wins don't really matter. So don't rush him back if he's going to get hurt again. Now he's hurt again. Not ideal. Now, as I said, though, the Flyers are back on the right track, depending on what you view as the right track. Now, here's the problem over the next few games. It's Murderer's Row. They're playing in Vegas on Thursday night against the Golden Knights, a very good team. Then they have a home-and-home with the Maple Leafs, who, oh, by the way, lead the Atlantic Division with 48 points. And then you are you welcome Dallas to town. Dallas is not having the greatest season they've ever had, but they're 22-13-1 on the season. They're a very strong team. So your next 4 games are pretty damn brutal. And if Sam Ersson misses time and Alexei Kolosov and Ivan Fedotov have to take over the goaltending responsibilities, Kolosov, who's been very inconsistent, and Fedotov, who hasn't played, good luck. Good luck. These could be some crooked numbers. I like the over in the next 4 games. Maybe. Depends on where the line's at. Anyway, that's the Flyers. So to recap, we are in the year 2025. The Eagles don't know what's going on with Saquon Barkley this week. The Sixers are in the midst of a renaissance. The Flyers are kind of a mess. It kind of sounds like what 2024 was, because again, it was just a new day. I'm going to go over here really quick. Brian Knowlton over on YouTube says, Russ, I get your point, but the rules are the rules as much as we don't like them. If they're on IR and recovered, your co-host is right. As much money as Comcast has, I doubt they want to be fined. The thing is, again, if he really wasn't healthy, like what does recovered mean exactly? If he's not back to being the full version of himself, I'd argue he's not fully healthy. He's healthier than he was. And how much is the league looking into it? And how does the league define healthy? Brian, you could be right. If whatever arbitrary metric the league would have used would have proven that Erson was healthy or healthy enough to come off of IR, but he's not actually healthy and now he's hurt again, I'd argue he was never healthy enough in the first place. JH also checks in here at the end of the show, says, woo, late again. Good thing for you, JH. As soon as the stream ends, you have access to the entire show. Now, I will remind each and every one of you, the drive to 500 is over. However, we are going to start trudging our way along to 1,000 subscribers to the channel, at which point there will be another giveaway, and I'm thinking it's going to be tickets to a game. We'll see. The way that we can get there faster is with your help. For just $10.99, I'm just kidding. The way that you can help is by sharing the show to other Philly sports fans, to other people in your life, friends, family. Share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook. Find the link, usually to YouTube. But remind people that this show is also available in podcast feed, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. The sooner we get to 1,000, the sooner somebody's going to win tickets to a game. Which game, Russ? I don't know. Kind of hard to say until we have an idea. Now, I'm looking very forward to the start of 2025. We have already entered, but next week I'm getting some additional help here on the Russ Joy Show, which I'm very excited about. And I think that this year, I'm going to look to try to bring on a guest at least every so often. I enjoy talking, and I enjoy the interaction with all of you, and that will never change. But I think that sometimes it might be worth having another person hop on the show from time to time. I am always open to your suggestions. So if there's somebody that you want to hear on the show, I have no problem reaching out and asking them. You just let me know. I'll be back on Thursday morning with a new episode of It's Just Wrestling, which is probably going to be your new favorite pro wrestling podcast. It's been around. It's funny. I actually looked back at like when the show launched, and it was like sometime early in 2023. Then it went dark for a while. Came back early in 2024. Then it went dark for a while. I'm going to be consistent with it because I finally have a little bit of help. A little bit of help coming in. And I'm very excited to have some help with the channels starting next week. So I'll be back on Thursday morning, 8:30 a.m. with It's Just Wrestling. And I'll be back here on Friday for the Russ Joy Show. With me, Russ Joy. But you already knew that and figured it out because you're smart. And it's also the name of the show. Allison asks a very good question, and one that I'm asking myself. When's the next Snow the Goalie, not Press Row show? I don't know. We keep trying to figure it out. Apparently the ball's in my court. I just learned that this week. It's in my court. So we might do one this week from home. I am not driving to Wells Fargo Center while the team is out of town to go down and do a show in the studio. If the other two want to go do it, God bless them. They certainly can. We will try to do an episode this week from home. That's my preference right now. And then we'll talk about it next week. Next week's a big one for the Flyers. They finally return home after this very long road trip. And they'll have 4 games at home. Maple Leafs, Stars, Ducks, as Quitter Gauthier comes to town, and the Panthers. So a lot of big stuff coming up with the Flyers. But anyway, that's the schedule. That's the schedule for Joy Media, for yours truly. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8:30 a.m., The Russ Joy Show. Thursday mornings at 8:30 a.m., It's Just Wrestling. Snow the Goalie. Where's Snow the Goalie going to land? Could end up landing permanently on Tuesdays. It'd be nice. Then it'd be a show every day. We'll see if it works out or not. In the meantime, make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you're watching on the Joy Media YouTube, by the way, you can subscribe there. Love you. But go over to the Russ Joy Show YouTube channel and subscribe there as well. Very helpful. All right, in the meantime, I hope everybody enjoys the rest of Wednesday. You enjoy Thursday. Maybe I'll talk to you on It's Just Wrestling. But if not, I'll talk to you on Friday morning here on the Russ Joy Show. And as I mentioned before, I've been Russ Joy, but you know that because you're smart, and it's also the name of the show. I will talk to each and every one of you Friday morning here on the Russ Joy Show. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Let Saquon go for the rushing title, please.